The café was unlike any other in the city. Known for its exclusivity, it was a haven for the elite. High ceilings adorned with crystal chandeliers, tables set with fine china, and waiters who moved with practiced precision. Bernard Green, a 72-year-old billionaire, sat at his favorite table by the window, his tailored suit perfectly matching his air of authority. He had built his empire from scratch, turning a small investment into a conglomerate worth billions. His presence commanded respect, and as always, the other patrons cast admiring and envious glances in his direction. Across from him sat Marissa, his wife. Much younger and undeniably beautiful, she was the picture of sophistication in her designer dress and sparkling diamond earrings. Yet, there was a certain detachment in her demeanor. Her manicured fingers tapped away at her phone, scrolling endlessly through social media, barely acknowledging Bernard's presence. The tension between the couple was almost palpable. Bernard sipped his espresso, his sharp eyes occasionally flickering toward Marissa, whose preoccupation with her phone seemed to frustrate him. But as a man used to keeping his emotions in check, he said nothing, merely watching as she ignored the world around her. Outside, the hustle and bustle of the city continued. Among the throng of people was a homeless boy, his oversized hoodie hanging loosely over his thin frame. His face was gaunt, his eyes shadowed with hunger and exhaustion. He stood at a distance, watching the café through the glass, his gaze darting between the lavishly dressed patrons and the plates of gourmet food being served. The boy's stomach growled, a painful reminder of his empty days. Yet he remained rooted to the spot, something about the scene inside compelling him to. Inside the café, Bernard and Marissa's waiter arrived, placing a delicate porcelain plate in front of each of them. Bernard's meal was a meticulously plated steak, while Marissa's dish, a vibrant salad topped with fresh berries and goat cheese, seemed barely touched. She poked at it absent-mindedly, still engrossed in her phone. Bernard sighed, his patience wearing thin. "Marissa," he said finally, his deep voice cutting through the low hum of conversations in the café. "Is there something more important than spending time with your husband?" Marissa looked up, startled, as if she'd forgotten he was there. "Oh, sorry," she muttered, setting her phone down, though her fingers still hovered near it. Bernard shook his head, but chose not to press further. Instead, he turned his attention to his meal, picking up his fork and knife. Just as he was about to take his first bite, a commotion outside caught his attention. The homeless boy had moved closer, his face now pressed against the glass. His eyes were wide, locked onto Bernard's plate. The sight might have seemed pitiable to others, but to Bernard, it was merely an unwelcome interruption. He frowned, muttering under his breath about the lack of security. But then, something unexpected happened. The boy's expression changed. Fear replaced hunger. He banged on the glass, startling everyone inside. "Don't eat that," the boy shouted, his voice muffled but urgent. His hands slapped against the window repeatedly, as if trying to break through. The entire café went silent. All eyes turned to Bernard, who froze, his fork hovering inches from his mouth. Marissa gasped, her hand flying to her chest. The waiters and patrons exchanged confused glances, unsure of how to react. Bernard put down his fork slowly, his sharp eyes narrowing at the boy. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his voice loud enough to command attention but still controlled. The boy kept shouting, his voice rising in desperation. "Don't eat it. Please, sir, don't eat that food." A waiter rushed to Bernard's side, leaning in to whisper, "Should I call security, Mr. Green?" Bernard waved him off. "Not yet. Let's see what this is about." Marissa, her face pale, looked between Bernard and the boy. "What does he mean? Is he crazy?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. The boy was now at the café door, trying to push it open, but a doorman blocked his way. "Let me in," he cried, his voice cracking. "It's important. He can't eat that." Finally, Bernard gestured for the doorman to let the boy through. "Bring him here," he ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. The café patrons murmured amongst themselves, the quiet elegance of the place shattered by the unfolding drama. The boy stumbled inside, his small frame dwarfed by the opulence surrounding him. He hesitated, looking around nervously, before locking eyes with Bernard. "What's the meaning of this interruption?" Bernard asked, his voice stern. The boy swallowed hard, his hands trembling. "Sir, I saw her," he stammered, pointing a shaky finger at Marissa. She put something in your food." Gasps rippled through the café. Marissa's face turned ashen, her wide eyes darting to Bernard. "What?" "That's ridiculous," she exclaimed, her voice high-pitched. "This boy is clearly lying." Bernard's sharp gaze shifted to Marissa, studying her reaction. She looked panicked, her polished composure crumbling under the weight of the boy's accusation. "Explain yourself," Bernard said, his voice steady but cold. He turned to the boy. "What did you see?" The boy hesitated, his thin fingers gripping the edge of the table for support. "I've been outside all day, sir. I was watching you through the glass. I saw her take something out of her bag and sprinkle it on your food when you weren't looking." Marissa jumped to her feet, her chair screeching against the polished floor. "This is absurd," she cried. "Bernard, you can't seriously believe this child over me. Look at him. He's just trying to get money or attention." The cafe erupted in whispers. The once serene environment was now charged with tension. Bernard raised a hand, silencing everyone. "I don't make decisions based on emotions, Marissa," he said firmly. He signaled to the waiter. "Take this plate to the back and have it tested immediately." Marissa's face darkened. "You can't be serious," she hissed. "You're actually entertaining this nonsense?" Bernard's expression remained unreadable. Until proven otherwise, this boy's words deserve as much weight. Minutes felt like hours as the cafe staff took Bernard's plate to be tested. The boy stood awkwardly by the table, his gaunt face showing a mix of fear and determination. Marissa sat down again, her hands shaking as she clutched her phone, refusing to meet Bernard's eyes. Finally, the waiter returned, accompanied by the cafe's head chef. The chef held a small vial in his hand, his face grim. "Mr. Green," the chef began, his voice heavy with hesitation. "We tested the food. There was a substance in it, a chemical compound that could cause serious harm if ingested." The cafe went deathly silent. Marissa's breath caught in her throat, her eyes wide with shock. No, this can't be true," she protested, her voice frantic. "Someone must have planted it there." "It wasn't me." Bernard stood, his towering frame casting a shadow over Marissa. "Is that so?" he asked quietly, his voice dangerously calm. "Then why are you so nervous? Why did this boy see you tampering with my food?" "I didn't," Marissa began, but Bernard cut her off. "Enough," he said, his tone final. He turned to the boy. "What's your name?" "Jamal," the boy replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Jamal," Bernard said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You may have just saved my life." "Thank you." Jamal looked up at Bernard, his eyes brimming with tears. "I just didn't want anything bad to happen to you, sir." As Bernard called for security to escort Marissa away, the boy's bravery became the talk of the cafe. Little did Bernard know, this encounter was the beginning of a life-changing connection that would reshape both his and Jamal's futures forever.